Anytime someone starts a new business, whether it's a manufacturer, a retail organization, or a logistics company or some technology company, the first thing is to get the clients, and in nowadays world, to connect with the clients, to integrate with them.
Welcome to Building Better Worlds. Our mission here is simple: to explore how the innovations of Web3 can deliver on its potential to build a sustainable, more equitable world. Welcome to this episode of Building Better Worlds, and today we have a special guest all the way from Tallinn, Estonia. We have Sander Gansen, is that right?
Yeah, nice to be with you.
Nice to meet you. So Sander, I have read about you. You're doing great work in the Web3 space. Let's go back to how it all began for you. I know you started a business when you were around 14 years old. What led to that? How did you start the business, and what was it, and what came from it?
Yeah, I've been very lucky that my parents have been entrepreneurs throughout my whole life, meaning that from the young age, my father was already taking me to different business meetings with himself. And as a result, I was introduced to the ways of running businesses and running meetings and everything else while I was still 4 years old. And later, when I was 14, then my parents already offered that maybe I want to join the family business and start really doing something cool with them. And now it's been a wild ride since.
Oh, nice. So you started really young. Your parents encouraged you to go into business. And that's where you developed at least the passion or the drive to pursue business further.
Yeah, actually my interest always relied with science and technology.
Okay,
but I realized that the only way you can be a good inventor is if you're actually able to turn those inventions into a business so that those will be scaling and spreading around the world. So that's why I decided that I'll rather become an entrepreneur first and then just work with technology people.
Awesome. And so what was the name of your first business, and what was the product or the service?
I actually don't remember the name anymore. However, the first thing was related to e-commerce. So we were building a e-commerce website together with my dad, and started selling different health products and beauty products and other things like that. Okay, great. And so what lessons from that took you into the next phase of your life? Because I know from there, skip a few years ahead, you went into capital investments and all of that. So what lessons did you learn from there as a young child that propelled you into this next phase of your life? I think the biggest thing that I learned and I've been using this skill ever since is everything that has something to do with marketing. So I was starting to write blogs and other types of content, started using social media, email marketing, and everything else around that. So that skill ended up being very useful. At the same time, I also learned that if you're building any business, it should be scalable from the get-go. At least it should have the future of becoming scalable, because the energy that you put into anything would be the same, and it better be big if you already put the time into it. Right.
And so that is a good lesson. So now, then you went into capital, right? Raising capital. How was that? How was that experience for you?
Well, with the first companies, I never had to raise capital because it was something where we just could started off with our own funds and get it into the black right away. However, once I was already in the first year of university, then we were introduced to the world of fundraising and pitching to investors, and that's where we managed to raise our first just a couple of grants initially in order to start building our prototype. And then at the same time, I also went to Draper University down in Silicon Valley together with Tim Draper, who's been a big investor nowadays also in Web3 space. And it was funny that second day there, I was pitching my idea that we had just raised some money for. And then he was asking that, okay, so the thing that you're doing, is it in your heart or in your head? If latter, don't say anything, just stop.
So it is.
Interesting. I like that. Is it in your heart or in your head? Okay. And so that, was it in your heart?
So that particular thing was I did like the field of sharing economy, and I had been researching it ever since from high school. But I never found anything that I really liked within the industry. So eventually we ended up building a marketplace for construction workers, which just seemed obvious because I knew the world of construction from my parents' side. And I figured that let's bring in the talent side. However, we quickly learned that all the great construction workers are always employed, and the only ones that want to go into any marketplace are rather those that no one wants to hire. So we kept on pushing it, but our developers really never wanted to work on it. So the moment when I popped the news that let's stop, everyone cheered, and we were able to continue with new ideas afterwards.
Okay, but at least, you put it out there. It was a great idea, but it didn't have the passion behind it, maybe. But it was, at least, I'm sure you learned some lessons from that experience.
I think it's introduced me to the world of pitching, to start talking to the investors. This was the thing that led me to Silicon Valley, to Draper University. And then once I returned from there back to Estonia, then my father had started to build his first startup. So I now had the skill set to start helping them. And that's where we already started raising bigger amounts and doing much more about tech and scaling and everything else.
Oh, wonderful. So now, take us the journey. How does World of WOF, right? WOF Labs. How does World of Freight Labs? How do you come from that experience to building World of Freight Labs?
So the same company that we started working on once I returned, together with a team of way too many founders. We had 8 founders at that point. We started working in supply chain and building supply chain technologies. Again, learning a lot, raising somewhat over $1 million over the first 1.5 years, kept on going. And then we discovered that we had done everything wrong that we could do. We had too many founders in the start. We didn't really look at the cap tables. We kept on pivoting a lot. And eventually we realized that this thing can't really go anywhere. And we had maybe also done some wrong technology choices. So we, fortunately, were able to sell the company later and gain the experience of how not to sell a company to another party, which is another full book that we will eventually have to write about. But the main takeaway was that don't only focus on selling yourself, but also make due diligence on the buyer.
Right.
Anyway, I learned a lot. At the same time, managed to go into much more deep in tech and started helping this robotics education ecosystem. And they invited me to help them scale this organization. So within 6 months, we took a Estonian-based organization into roughly 25 countries, including the likes of Japan, India, Nigeria, US, as well as Afghanistan, of all the places.
Nice.
And this was a nice wild ride. But then it was time to get back home. COVID started. I got my first child. And it took a couple of years, slightly more relaxed, until I finally had the urge to really start building something big again. And then we went back to the first love of supply chain. And over a couple of iterations, we realized that the best way how to solve this all is to utilize the blockchain technology as well. So we generated WOF Labs and started working towards our visions.
Awesome. So now, before we move on to that part that you built, WOF Labs, is that still operational?
Yep. So WOF Labs is the research and development arm under which we build all of our projects at the moment.
Oh, nice. And so, I always use some of my experience. The fact that you said you expanded out into like Nigeria and Japan. I'm from Uganda. How is it possible? If someone was watching, because they're watching me, my cousin out there, how could they expand into Uganda or any other country that's out there?
Yeah, it was a very fun experience. I didn't know too much about robotics. Of course, I knew how robots work, but I never had any experience in the business of building robots. And I didn't really know anyone outside in the industry either. So I just decided to take the whole budget that they gave to me and bought like 15 plane tickets into different places where they had some sort of events happening. And I just flew there with no preparation other than knowing who is the main organizer. And then I arrived and said, "Hi, I'm Sander, let's talk." And then we spent a few days together and start until we managed to build a relationship and continue things with. First trip like that was all the way to Colombia. And it was a very fun experience that opened all the other doors afterwards.
Awesome. So it was more of this meeting led to something else that led to something even bigger. Chance meeting with the right people that led to building this experience. All right, so I love it.
Exactly.
So now, you said you had your first child, you kind of took a back role on this, and then you wanted to get back into building something great, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the great endeavor that you're building now?
Yeah, so ever since we started our first supply chain company, we've been focusing on the same problem of connectivity across all supply chain organizations. And the big problem that we are seeing is that, and it actually goes all the way to all trade and B2B companies, but anytime someone starts a new business, whether it's a manufacturer, a retail organization, or a logistics company or some technology company, the first thing is to get the clients, and in nowadays world, to connect with the clients, to integrate with them. But the world is full of all sorts of different standards. Some are more advanced and they're using latest things such as connecting via APIs. Other organizations are still using mainframes and standards from 70s such as EDIs. And as a result, the whole industry is a mess where information isn't really flowing. Why it's a big problem is that everyone actually wants completely something else. They want transparency. They want traceability, they want more trust between partners. But before you get the data connected, you can't really achieve anything else. And that's what we are focusing on with the protocol that we're building under WOF Labs called Supplain, which is built to be the open infrastructure for global supply chains to enable them to connect and communicate with one another directly without third parties that would have any access to this information that they are sharing or would have any control over the organization in the long run.
All right, so I'm going to rephrase this. You're almost kind of building a structure where you almost take out the middleman and you create direct transactions and communication between the supply and the demand.
So that's exactly how the blockchain world nowadays works, is that you're able to build different protocols whereby different entities can directly communicate and all the security, all the management is being done by the community members, by the validators, and as a result, for those companies, they are basically directly connected, peer-to-peer, more secure, somewhat you can even build different privacy layers in between. And in reality, of course, it is all the players that are using the protocol who are continuing to build solutions onto the protocol, as well as to keep holding it as a secure way to transfer data.
Nice. So how does, you probably answered it, but maybe expand on it. How does blockchain, Web3, and this new metaverse help this mission of building this new way of doing business?
Yeah, so possibly you could be building those the same things with Web2 tools. with just using cloud infrastructure and connecting parties directly with one another. The problem with using cloud infrastructure only is that there needs to be some third party who has to control the information flow and might have backdoors built into it. That is exactly what we learned with our previous company, that supply chain companies, big and small, they don't really want to enable third parties have access to their data, nor are they willing to share any percentage of just for changing this data between themselves. And that is why we started building a protocol which is, on the one hand, it's a blockchain like Ethereum or Cardano or many others, but it's focused primarily on companies' information exchange and enables the use of corporate identities, the use of both public and private networks, and it generates this information containers whereby you can generate a digital twin of each physical product over its course of moving from the supplier all the way to the end consumer, and add all the information into this container with different viewing and writing accesses. So as a result, what the blockchain here does is it provides the opportunity to connect easily. It provides the logbook of being able to see who has access to the data, and it provides the tools to bring in the identities as well as the information management and verification side.
So now, with the product that you're building, with all the tools that are coming out, Web3, where do you see this going in the next 5 years? What's your projection?
Well, one side is number-wise, and the other side is actual use case-wise. When it comes to the number-wise, then we have some estimates that are showing that we should be reaching something around 300-400 million in revenue as a protocol within the next 3-4 years. It of course can be delayed by a year or two, or it can be faster depending on the how fast companies would start using it. When it comes to the actual thing that what will happen in the real world as a result of corporations to start using it is twofold. First of all, the information shared, which can be things such as the purchase agreement, all the way to bill of lading and all the other documents in between, including the warranties and the how to use the product type of thing. All of this can be in one place, and as a result, the end customers would end up having these digital receipts that they can always go back to whenever something breaks or when they need to order some new pieces or anything else to it. So it's much more controlled by them, and at the same time, throughout the life cycle, the initial manufacturers can be also seeing how their products are behaving, how often things may be needing some repairs, and while it is still moving to the customer, then that's the part where it's all more transparent and you can verify that it was sustainable or that it was exactly produced wherever the producer said it was produced.
Nice. So this is more of a personal question, yes, and it's leading into another question. So how old are you?
I'm 28.
28. Okay, so there's probably a 16-year-old or a 21-year-old or a 24-year-old that's going to watch this and they wonder, how do I get started? This all sounds good. How do I get started? Because, I don't have the experience. I didn't have my parents taking me to business meetings or anything like that. But I want to be able to do something great like what you are doing. How do I get started, and where can I find resources that can help me understand how to use the tools that I have in front of me?
Yeah, so even though I did mention that I had my parents that were giving me the opportunity to start building the businesses together with them, then the bigger thing that my parents gave to me were all the book recommendations and conference recommendations where to go and get new information. because of course, before you can do anything, you need to research about it and really understand how the nuts and bolts work. So from my side, I was just a reading machine, reading biographies of different entrepreneurs, reading different marketing, law, economics books, as well as going deep into industries themselves. And I think this may be leading to the part that what can young people do? First of all, get some experience in some real industry. In my case, we have been in supply chain for so long because the experience started with e-commerce and logistics and everything else around it. And for others, it may become something to do with games, it may be something to do with fashion or something else, but you would first need to go somewhere and get this experience, and it's easiest you could just go and work for a year somewhere or slightly longer and get it. And then once you have the industry insight, you can go and start thinking of ways how to bring some innovation into it so that you could start building a company on top of that. And I think the other thing which I would very much recommend is joining some sort of communities or going into an incubator, or if you can, an accelerator with a company where you have lots of mentors that would help you understand what you're actually doing and how you should be doing it. And perhaps you can find some lifelong mentors or advisors for your company that can keep helping you iterate it throughout its life cycle.
Nice. Okay, so you mentioned mentors. How valuable have mentors been in your journey? Very much so, because of course one person cannot know everything, and depending on the thing that you're doing, it may be completely different mentors that are able to educate you in this particular time. For example, when we were still scaling this robotics organization, then one of my mentors was the founder of Angry Birds, who was at that time also in education tech, Peter Vesterbacka from Finland. And together with him, we managed to travel to India, travel to China, and he was opening doors, he was going to meetings, taking me in there, just letting me sit there to see how he is acting with the different ministers, different high-level officials, as well as entrepreneurs. And this type of just looking something from the side gives you a totally new viewpoint. And if you have a couple of those experiences at the same time or over the course of your life, then eventually you'll be developing your own ways. Okay, so mentorship is fantastic. And so as a 28-year-old, have you taken on any mentees or people that you are showing the ropes?
Yes, I've been every now and then when I see some exciting new projects, then I try to help them, either by just advising them on a very specific path, or if they need overall help, then support them in more ways than just marketing or law focused. And yeah, so I've done it, and currently one of the companies that I was last mentoring, they're in the process of selling themselves to another bigger corporation. So it's nice to see when something successful comes out from not your own activities, but from someone else who you helped to get moving.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, what makes your company unique? Out of all the companies out there, what makes your company unique?
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, we need to go back into how we got started. So when we started thinking of doing WOF Labs and all the products within it, then it was so that the company that we sold our company to was looking to acquire another organization, but this team didn't survive while we were on our way to leave the organization as well. And as a result, we managed to find a couple of engineers, or the full engineering team, that was willing to start working on something new that had supply chain experience. So that's one side. Then the other thing was that we realized that as we were building something that needs to be neutral and it needs to be somewhat built together with the community, then before we laid any code into any files, we started building a community instead. And that was the heydays of NFTs, where everyone was doing some sort of ape pictures or monkey pictures, cow pictures, whatever. And we decided that as our industry is related to trucks and planes and ships, that we will do a NFT project with trucks, planes, and ships that would allow people to come in and give some funding to us via buying this art. But at the same time, to start thinking together with us, what should we really be building with Supplain? That's, I think, one of the very unique ways how we got started.
Awesome. So now, let me take it a little bit outside the field of what we're talking about. So the common man comes in and says, NFTs are just a fad, they're just a JPEG. But you've been building your business and your enterprise, and you understand the value of NFTs. How can you explain it to the common man and say, they're not just a JPEG? This is actually a value proposition. This is something that's valuable in the market, and actually you should find out more about it.
Yeah, if we go very simplified, then what is NFT? NFT is any piece of paper with a sequence number on it. So NFT just allows you to, as a concept of art side, it just allows you to differentiate different files. When we look at the technology side, then NFT is nothing else but just a container that has an owner, that can be transferred, that is logging the history of what has been done with it, and may contain information in text, audio, video, or some other format. So in fact, when we talk about digital twins in Supplain case, then we are using NFTs for that as well, which has nothing to do with arts or comics or games, but it's in order to save the information about real world products. So from that side point, NFTs are just a piece of new technology that allows us to do clever things.
Awesome. So the way you explained it, I know your company is, or is it World of Freight? They have over 300 NFTs under their umbrella. Is that right?
Yeah, so together with the World of Freight project that we launched in order to start funding Supplain, we have by now generated 4,200 NFTs, and we have been, these are the art NFTs. These are the different trucks and planes, which also have utilities. So we, on the site, we built a fully functioning supply chain simulator game, which we had just last month over 16,000 deliveries being done within the game. Yeah, we have the NFTs there like that as well.
So now, look ahead in the future for you. This is personal for you. At the end of the day, when everything is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be in this space? Because the fact that I'm interviewing you, you are a game changer. You are one of the key players in this space. What do you want your impact to be in this space?
One of the biggest things that we've been working towards is to educate people, and especially the executives at big corporations, that NFTs and the whole blockchain industry is not just about games and finance, but it really has a real world utility, and it's kind of like a next level of compute, of how we are storing, how we are sharing information. And I think this, as long as we get companies to realize this, we are already achieving a lot. If we now go a couple of steps further, then I would very much be honored if together with our team, we are able to build a new standard of information and exchange that tens of thousands of companies would be using in the next 10 years, and perhaps the whole societies would be run on over the next tens or hundreds of years. So that's kind of what we're trying to achieve together with the whole team.
Well, that's awesome, and I wish you success with that. Are there any parting words that you would want to have with the viewers of this episode? Anything that you'd like to leave them with?
I think the main thing is that if you think I can any way help whatever you're doing, then feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to get together or get on a call and discuss different ways how I can help you achieve the things that you want to achieve.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Santa, for your time. It has been a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we can tap again in the future and get some traction on what you are doing then.
Thank you as well, and all the best to all the viewers and listeners.
All right. You take care.